It was a peaceful afternoon in the small town of Willow Creek. The sun hung high in the sky, casting its warm golden glow across the quiet streets. Birds chirped softly from the trees, and the breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers blooming in nearby gardens. It was the kind of day where everything felt just right, calm, serene, and perfect for a walk. Emily, a 5-year-old girl with golden curls, skipped along the sidewalk, holding the leash of her large German shepherd, Max. A towering figure with sleek black and tan fur, walked calmly beside her, his steady pace matching her enthusiastic little strides. Despite his intimidating size, Max was gentle with Emily, a true protector in the eyes of her parents. Emily loved these afternoon walks. It was her time with Max, her time to imagine stories and talk to him as if he understood every word. And Max, well, he always seemed to listen, his warm brown eyes following her as she chatted away. Max, do you think Mrs. Henderson will bring her poodle today? Oh, look, there's Mr. Thompson with his huge Saint Bernard, Emily asked, tugging at the leash as they passed an elderly man walking his dog. Max didn't respond, but his tail swished happily, a sure sign that he was enjoying himself. He was a dog of few barks, but Emily didn't mind. She preferred to do the talking anyway. As they approached the park's entrance, Emily's excitement grew. She couldn't wait to let Max run freely, chasing after the colorful balls thrown by other kids. The park was always full of friendly faces. Kids, parents, and even the occasional jogger. It was a community of familiar faces, and Emily had always felt safe here. Come on, Max. Let's race to the swings, she giggled, speeding up and tugging at the leash. Max matched her pace effortlessly, his large paws thudding softly against the pavement. Just as they neared the swings, something caught Emily's eye. She stopped suddenly, her small hand tugging gently on the leash. Max paused too, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air, his body stiffening in a rare moment of alertness. Max, look, Emily whispered, her eyes wide with curiosity. She tugged on his leash, pulling him closer to a nearby sidewalk where a man lay sprawled on the ground. It wasn't just any man. Emily blinked, her breath catching in her throat. The man on the ground was wearing a dark blue suit, and his face was pale, almost too pale. His arms were outstretched, his body limp. But what struck Emily the most was the badge pinned to his chest. A silver FBI badge, half hidden under his body. Max? Emily's voice trembled as she knelt down, letting go of the leash. She crouched beside the man, her small hands trembling as she gently touched his shoulder. Are you okay? Max growled lowly, his hackles rising. Something was wrong, Emily could feel it. She leaned in closer, trying to see if the man was breathing. The faint scent of blood filled her nostrils, and her heart skipped a beat. Max, she whispered urgently. He's hurt. What do we do? Max barked once, sharply, as if understanding that something was terribly wrong. Emily's hands trembled as she carefully checked for a pulse. It was weak, barely there. The man was unconscious, his face twisted in pain. Emily bit her lip, her mind racing. She had to help him. But how? Don't worry, we'll get help, she said, more to herself than to Max. The air felt thick with tension, and the sound of distant footsteps grew louder as people began to notice the scene. Emily knew she couldn't just leave him there, but she also knew she wasn't strong enough to move him. Max's growls grew louder, more urgent, as if warning her to be careful. Emily stepped back and turned toward the street, her eyes scanning the area for someone who could help. She noticed a couple of pedestrians walking in the distance, but no one was close enough to hear her calls for help. Max, Emily said softly, her voice shaky. We need to find someone. But as she turned to look back at the FBI agent, she froze. The man's gun, which had been lying beside him, was now inches from his hand, almost as if it had been placed there deliberately. A chill ran down Emily's spine as she realized something wasn't right. Why was the gun so close, yet he wasn't holding it? Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. Emily whipped her head around to see two police officers approaching from the corner of the street. They were talking among themselves, but their voices faltered when they saw Emily kneeling beside the unconscious man. "Hey, kid, what are you doing here?" One of the officers called out, his voice sharp and a little panicked. Emily looked up, her heart racing. "He's hurt. He needs help." The officers quickly approached, their eyes scanning the area. One of them, Officer Miller, kneeled beside the FBI agent and checked for signs of life. He looked up at the other officer, Officer Carter, and nodded grimly. "He's still breathing, but barely. We need an ambulance now," Officer Miller barked. Officer Carter immediately reached for his radio, his face pale. Emily stood there, clutching Max's leash tightly, unsure of what to do next. Max's body remained tense. His ears perked as he watched the officers work. The tension in the air was palpable, and Emily felt a strange sense of dread creeping up her spine. Suddenly, Officer Miller looked up, his eyes locking with Emily's. "Kid, you need to get back. This is no place for a young girl." But Emily couldn't move. Her curiosity was too strong, her mind racing with questions. Why was this man on the sidewalk? What had happened to him? Why was he an FBI agent? Just then, another car pulled up to the scene. Emily's eyes widened as she recognized the man stepping out of the car. It was Agent Cole, one of the top FBI agents her father had once mentioned in passing. He had a sharp, calculating gaze, his expression tense as he hurried over to the scene. "Where is he?" Agent Cole demanded. "He's right there," Officer Miller said, pointing to the unconscious agent. "We've called for backup. He's alive, but barely." Agent Cole knelt beside the FBI agent and began to assess the situation. His eyes flicked over the badge and gun, his face darkening with worry. Emily watched from a distance, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. What was going on? Why was an FBI agent lying unconscious in the middle of the street? Before she could gather her thoughts, Agent Cole stood up, his gaze sweeping the area. He looked at Emily for a long moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if he was sizing her up. "Stay out of this, kid," he said, his voice low but firm. But Emily wasn't listening. She had to know more. Something about this scene felt all wrong. She couldn't just walk away. As Agent Cole continued his examination, Emily's eyes darted around the scene. The more she thought about it, the more she realized there was something strange about this entire situation, and she had a feeling the answers were closer than she imagined. But just as she turned to walk away, she heard something, footsteps approaching from behind. She froze, her heart pounding. Someone was watching her. The air felt thick with tension as Emily lingered in the shadows, her heart still pounding from the discovery of the unconscious FBI agent. The officers were busy working, and Agent Cole was now engaged in a hushed conversation with Officer Miller. They were too far away for Emily to hear the specifics, but their body language made it clear that something was off. There was a quiet urgency in their movements, a subtle edge to their voices. Emily's eyes drifted toward Max, who stood beside her, his sharp gaze following the men. His usual calm demeanor had shifted, and he now stood rigid, his ears twitching at every sound. It was as if he could sense something more than just the visible situation. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than a simple accident or an unfortunate attack. "Max?" she whispered, leaning down to stroke his fur. "What's going on?" Max didn't respond, of course. But as Emily stood there, her thoughts swirling with questions, she noticed something. There, just beside the fallen agent's body, she saw a flash of metal, his badge. It had been half hidden beneath his arm when she first saw him, but now it was exposed, catching the light. Something about the way it gleamed seemed deliberate, almost as if someone had carefully placed it there. Her breath caught in her throat as a thought hit her. Why would they leave his badge out in the open? The FBI agent's gun, which had been left behind near his hand, added to the suspicion. A trained agent wouldn't simply leave his weapon like that. Felt all too staged. Before she could process any more thoughts, Agent Cole abruptly stood up and began pacing back and forth, his face tight with frustration. He spoke quickly, his voice low and firm, and Emily could make out a few words despite the distance. "This wasn't supposed to happen. We're compromised." Officer Miller nodded, his face grim. Do you think they knew he was coming? That would explain why they found him so early. We need to move fast, Agent Cole replied, his voice edged with worry. We can't afford to waste time. Let's get him somewhere secure. Emily's curiosity burned like a fire. She had overheard enough to realize that something much bigger was happening here. This wasn't just some random attack. This agent, whoever he was, had been targeted, and whoever was behind this knew exactly what they were doing. But why would they target an FBI agent? What was he investigating? Was her family somehow involved in this? The more she thought about it, the more unsettling the situation became. Her father worked as a local police officer, and while he wasn't involved in any major cases, he sometimes mentioned big operations happening in the city. Could this be related to something bigger? Something her father didn't know about? Before Emily could decide what to do next, she heard Officer Carter's voice calling her name. Emily, get back here, Officer Carter shouted, his face slightly panicked. I told you to stay away from this. Emily froze. She hadn't realized she had moved so close to the scene, but now she was standing just feet away from the agent, staring at his badge and the strange circumstances surrounding him. Slowly, she backed away, her mind racing. Max, sensing her unease, whined softly, pressing his body against her leg. She crouched down to pet him, trying to calm her nerves. But then a thought struck her. Something about this situation didn't add up. Why was she the only one who seemed to notice the small details, the badge, the gun? Wasn't anyone else questioning these things? She had to know more. She couldn't let this go. As she slowly backed away, trying to make her way to a safe distance, a car pulled up to the scene. The tires screeched to a halt, and out of the car stepped a man in a dark suit. Emily's eyes widened as she recognized him immediately. Agent Cole had just spoken to him in hushed tones. The man was tall, well-groomed, and wore a look of calm authority, but his eyes, sharp and calculating, gave away the weight of the situation. He was someone important, someone who had to have answers. Emily's heart raced as she took a few more steps back, trying to stay out of sight. She wasn't sure why, but something about the man's arrival made her feel uneasy. He wasn't just another agent. There was something different about him. And as she watched from behind a parked car, she noticed his eyes sweeping the scene, lingering on her for just a moment before he entered the fray. He's here, Agent Cole muttered, his voice tight. The man, Agent Thompson, as Emily would later learn, approached the fallen agent, kneeling beside him with practiced ease. He checked the agent's pulse and quickly ordered the officers to move him to an ambulance. As the team began to load the injured agent onto the stretcher, Agent Thompson turned his gaze once again toward Emily, this time with a more focused expression. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Without saying a word, Agent Thompson gestured for Agent Cole to follow him. The two agents walked a few paces away from the scene, their voices low, but Emily could still make out bits of their conversation. We've got a leak, Agent Thompson said, his voice hard. Someone tipped them off. They were waiting for him. Agent Cole's face darkened, and he clenched his jaw. No. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were sure they wouldn't find out about him until it was too late. The mission was supposed to be clean. Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. The conversation only deepened the mystery. A leak? What mission? Before she could process any more, a voice startled her from behind. Emily! There you are. She spun around to find Detective Hayes, a familiar face from her father's old cases. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and a friendly smile, though his expression now was anything but relaxed. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice soft but firm as he knelt to her level. I saw the agent. He's hurt. I wanted to help, Emily stammered, but something in her voice gave her away. She wasn't just worried about the agent. She had a feeling this was more than an accident. Detective Hayes looked over his shoulder at the scene, his face momentarily clouded with concern. You shouldn't be here, kid. It's dangerous. I know, but something's wrong. This isn't just an accident. Detective? Emily said quietly, her voice laced with conviction. Detective Hayes studied her for a moment, then sighed deeply. All right, listen, if you really want to help, you need to go home. This is bigger than you think. It's better if you stay out of it. But Emily wasn't listening. Her mind was already working on the puzzle. A leak, a secret mission, a tip-off. She was getting closer to the truth. As Emily turned to leave, she felt the strange, cold gaze of Agent Thompson on her again. This time, his eyes didn't leave her face. He knew. He knew that Emily had overheard more than she should have. And that, she realized, was a problem. Emily's footsteps were slow and hesitant as she walked away from the scene. Max, sensing her unease, stayed close, his large form nearly brushing against her as they made their way down the street. The sunlight no longer seemed as warm, and the bustling sound of the neighborhood felt distant, as if it were part of a world she no longer belonged to. Her thoughts raced, all centered around the same questions. Why had that FBI agent been left out in the open like that? What mission had he been involved in? And, most importantly, what was the real story behind the mysterious men she'd overheard? She could feel the weight of the situation hanging over her like a storm cloud, but she had no idea just how much deeper the mystery ran. Max slowed down, and Emily paused, her mind still reeling. Then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to find Detective Hayes walking briskly toward her. His face was tight, his usual friendly expression now replaced with something more serious, even troubled. "You're not going home, are you?" he asked, his voice low. Emily shook her head, her resolve hardening. "I can't just forget about what happened, Detective. I need to know what's going on. I heard them talking. That agent, the one lying there, it wasn't random. They were waiting for him. He wasn't just any FBI agent, was he?" Detective Hayes stopped walking and looked at her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You overheard more than you should have, Emily. It's dangerous to get involved in this." "I don't care about danger," Emily replied quickly, her voice tinged with the determination she felt deep down. "I want to help." Detective Hayes sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Listen, kid, you're smart, but you're not ready for this. There are things going on here that you don't understand. Things that could put you in real danger." Emily stood her ground. "I know what I heard. The agent wasn't just injured. There's something bigger going on. Something personal." Detective Hayes's expression softened for a moment, but only for a second. Then it turned serious again. "Okay, fine. I'll tell you what I can, but you have to promise me something. Promise me you won't go any further than this. You need to stay out of it, for your own good." Emily nodded, eager for any piece of information that could help her understand the situation. "All right," Detective Hayes began. "The agent you saw, the one lying there, his name is Agent Carter. He's been working undercover on a case involving organized crime. The problem is, we believe someone inside the FBI has been feeding information to the criminals. There's a leak, and because of that leak, they knew Agent Carter was coming." Emily's heart raced as she listened intently. A leak? Someone inside the FBI? That's why they ambushed him. They were expecting him. Hayes continued, his voice lower now, as if weighing every word. They must have known about his operation, and they got to him before he could complete it. Emily swallowed hard, trying to process everything. What was he investigating? What was so important that someone wanted to stop him? Detective Hayes shook his head. "I can't go into details, but let's just say this wasn't just about busting a few criminals. Agent Carter was on to something much bigger. Something that goes deep into the heart of this city's crime syndicates. People don't want that kind of information getting out." Emily's mind spun with possibilities. What was Agent Carter really after? And why did it feel like she was being pulled deeper into a situation she didn't fully understand? As if reading her thoughts, Detective Hayes spoke again. "I know you're curious, but there's nothing you can do. These people are dangerous. If they find out you know too much, it could put your life at risk. Understand?" But Emily wasn't listening anymore. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but there was still a huge gap in her understanding. If Agent Carter had been undercover, why was he attacked so openly? And why had no one told her about the leak inside the FBI? Suddenly, a sharp bark broke through her thoughts. Max stood alert beside her, his ears perked. Emily turned to see him staring intently at the street ahead, his gaze focused on something or someone. "Max, what is it?" Emily asked softly, kneeling down beside him. She followed his gaze, her eyes narrowing when she saw Agent Thompson approaching. He was walking toward them with that same cold, calculating expression, his sharp blue eyes never leaving Emily. Her heart skipped a beat. This time, there was no mistaking the tension in the air. Agent Thompson knew she had overheard more than she should have. He knew she was involved now. "Emily," he said, his voice even and controlled, but there was a dangerous edge to it. "We need to talk." Emily felt her stomach twist as Agent Thompson stopped right in front of her. His gaze flicked to Max, who was still growling softly at him, then back to Emily. The way he stood there, as if waiting for her to say something, made Emily feel like a cornered animal. Her mind raced, her thoughts scattered. What was he going to do? I don't know anything, Agent Thompson," Emily said, her voice betraying her uncertainty. Agent Thompson's lips curled into a thin, humorless smile. "I'm sure you don't, Emily. But the problem is you overheard things you weren't supposed to. And now it's too late for you to turn back." Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest as Agent Thompson's piercing blue eyes bore into her. Max, still growling lowly, took a step forward, his posture protective, but Emily gently placed a hand on his head to calm him. She didn't want to escalate the situation, especially now that she had no idea what Agent Thompson's intentions were. "I didn't hear anything important," Emily said, her voice more confident than she felt. "I was just walking my dog." Agent Thompson raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "You heard more than enough, Emily. I saw the way you were looking at the badge, the gun. You're not as innocent as you're trying to appear." Emily's mind raced, but she didn't let her anxiety show. What did he want from her? She didn't want to be part of any FBI investigation. She wasn't a spy or an undercover agent. But she couldn't just ignore what she had seen. She couldn't walk away from this now. Before she could speak, Detective Hayes, who had been watching silently from the sidelines, stepped forward, his expression hard. "Thompson, that's enough. She's just a kid." Agent Thompson turned toward Hayes, his gaze hardening. "She's more involved than you think, Hayes. She overheard something, and now she's part of this mess." Hayes shook his head slowly, his jaw tightening. "I understand that you're trying to protect the operation, but threatening a child is not going to help anyone. We need her on our side, not against us." Emily's eyes flicked between the two men, a sense of urgency growing in her chest. What did Hayes mean by that? Thompson scoffed, clearly irritated. "On our side? She's a liability. The last thing we need right now is a civilian poking her nose into things she doesn't understand." Detective Hayes stepped forward, lowering his voice so only Emily could hear. "Emily, listen to me. You don't have to get involved. You've already seen enough. Just go home. Okay? You can pretend this didn't happen." But Emily shook her head, her fists clenching at her sides. "I can't. You're right, I've already seen too much. I don't know who's involved in this, but I know there's something big going on, and it's not just about Agent Carter. I need to know the truth. I can't just go home and forget about it." Hayes looked at her for a long moment, his face filled with concern. "Emily, please. You're in danger. I'm asking you as a favor, go home. I'll make sure you're safe. Just leave this to us." But Emily didn't budge. "I'm not going anywhere until I know what happened to him, Detective. You're trying to protect me, but I'm not the one who needs protection. He does." Before Hayes could reply, a new voice interrupted. "You're right. He does." Emily turned quickly to find a woman approaching them. She was tall and slim, with dark hair tied back in a ponytail, wearing a leather jacket and jeans. Her eyes were sharp, and her expression was one of quiet intensity. She wasn't someone Emily recognized, but there was something familiar about her. She walked right up to Agent Thompson and stood beside him, her gaze shifting between him and Emily. "We can't let this go, Thompson," she said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. She's right. We need all the help we can get. Agent Thompson's expression soured, but he didn't argue. I told you, Grace, we're dealing with something far bigger than we can handle right now. We can't bring a kid into this. Grace, the woman who had just spoken, turned to Emily with a look of understanding. I know you're scared. This isn't a game, Emily. But right now, you might be the only one who can help us. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Me? How can I help? I'm just a kid. Grace smiled faintly, though her eyes remained serious. You overheard something crucial. Something that links you to this case more than you realize. You don't know it yet, but you're already involved. The best thing you can do is stay close to us. You might just hold the key to cracking this case wide open. Agent Thompson scowled. We don't have time for this, Grace. We can't just drag her into the middle of this. Too late, Grace replied calmly. She's already in it. We'll protect her, but we need her help. She's our best chance. Emily could hardly believe what she was hearing. She wasn't sure whether to be terrified or relieved, but something told her that Grace wasn't going to let her go. And for the first time, Emily realized that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't something she could just walk away from. Her heart pounded as she made a decision. I'll help, but I need to know what's going on. I won't be left in the dark anymore. Grace nodded, her expression softening slightly. We can't tell you everything right now, but we'll bring you up to speed. Just stick with us, and we'll figure this out together. Detective Hayes stepped back, shaking his head, but he didn't argue. He knew that once Emily made up her mind, there was no changing it. All right, Hayes said reluctantly. But we're doing this my way. If you're in, you're in. No turning back. Emily nodded, feeling a sense of determination settle within her. She had no idea what kind of storm she was walking into, but for the first time, she felt like she might have a real chance to make a difference. As the group began to move toward the edge of the park, a figure emerged from the shadows, watching them closely. Emily froze, her stomach twisting as she realized that someone else had been watching them all along. The man in the shadows stepped forward, his face partially hidden, but his presence unmistakable. Emily's eyes widened in recognition. It was Agent Carter, the very agent who had been attacked earlier. Except now he was standing, and he was looking straight at them. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she stared at Agent Carter, who was standing there, alive and seemingly well, despite everything that had happened. His clothes were slightly disheveled, and there was still a faint smear of blood on his forehead, but he was upright, his sharp eyes scanning the area with a focused intensity. Agent Carter? Emily whispered, stepping forward instinctively. He didn't respond at first, his gaze flicking over to Agent Thompson and Grace before landing back on her. There was something unsettling about the way he looked at her, almost as if he was trying to gauge how much she knew. Emily, you shouldn't be here, Agent Carter said finally, his voice gravelly yet strong. This situation, it's far more complicated than you think. And dangerous. Max, still by Emily's side, growled lowly at the sudden appearance of the agent. Emily gently placed a hand on his back to calm him, her eyes never leaving Agent Carter's. I thought you were hurt. You were unconscious. Emily started, confusion and worry still clouding her thoughts. Agent Carter nodded slowly, the corner of his mouth twitching as if he wanted to smile but couldn't quite bring himself to. But I was also playing my part. I had to let them think I was down for good. I needed to get close to someone. To you. Emily's heart skipped. Close to me? Why? Grace stepped forward, her expression serious. He's not the man you think he is. This agent, Carter, he's been working both sides of this operation. He's the reason all of this is happening. Emily looked at Grace in disbelief. What do you mean? He's an FBI agent. How could he be working both sides? Agent Carter's face darkened. I didn't have a choice. There's a bigger player in this game, someone far more powerful than anyone in the FBI ever suspected. And I'm the one who got too close. I'm not following, Emily said, her mind spinning. Who are you really working for, Agent Carter? The agent's eyes flicked nervously to Agent Thompson, who had remained silent up until now. The weight of the tension in the air grew heavier, and Emily could feel the final pieces of the puzzle starting to click into place. "I was working for the FBI," Carter said slowly, "but not all of them were on our side. There's a corrupt faction in the agency itself, people who are in bed with the criminals we've been chasing. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I had no choice but to work with them. I had to get close enough to find out who was behind it all." Grace's voice was quiet but firm as she spoke. "And we've been trying to protect you ever since we found out Carter's true role in this." Emily felt the weight of the truth land on her like a heavy blow. "So, everything I've seen, the agent on the ground, the gun, the badge, it was all a setup? You were pretending to be dead?" she asked, the shock in her voice evident. "Yes," Agent Carter replied. "It was the only way to keep myself off their radar. They thought I was dead, which allowed me to move freely and figure out who was pulling the strings. I didn't want you to get dragged into this, but now it's too late. You're already involved." Emily could feel the anger rising within her. Why had he kept her in the dark? Why had he made her believe something else when he knew all along what was really going on? "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily demanded. "Why didn't you trust me to help you from the start? I knew something was off. I've seen what you've done, and I know you're trying to do the right thing, but you've kept so much from me." Agent Carter looked down, his gaze filled with regret. "I was trying to protect you, Emily. I thought if you didn't know anything, you'd be safe. But now I see I was wrong. You're far more involved than I thought. And they won't stop until they silence everyone who knows." Max growled again, sensing the change in the atmosphere. Emily reached down to stroke his fur, trying to calm herself. She didn't know who to trust anymore. Agent Carter had lied to her, but was he still the person he once appeared to be? Was this all part of a greater plan? "Where do we go from here?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. "What happens now?" Agent Thompson stepped forward then, his tone grave. "The truth is, we don't have much time. The people Carter's been trying to expose, they know we're onto them. We can't hide forever. And they won't hesitate to eliminate anyone standing in their way." "Who are they?" Emily asked, her eyes darting between the two agents. "The syndicate we've been tracking," Grace said, her voice filled with determination. "A powerful criminal organization with ties reaching all the way into law enforcement. They've been operating under our noses for years. We need to move fast," Carter added, his voice sharp with urgency. "We need to act now before they come for us." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the street. Emily's heart skipped as she turned, her eyes widening as she saw a black van speeding toward them, tires screeching. She could hear the unmistakable sound of gunshots as the van came to a screeching halt. "Get down!" shouted Agent Thompson, pulling Emily behind a nearby car. Gunfire rang out again as men in black suits emerged from the van, weapons drawn. They were closing in quickly, and Emily knew they didn't have much time before it was too late. The agents moved into position, but Emily's eyes were drawn to the van. A figure emerged from the back, tall and imposing, his face obscured by the shadow of his hood. The leader, the one they had all been hunting, and now it seemed he was finally here. "Stay down, Emily," Grace hissed. "It's now or never. You ready?" Emily's pulse raced as she looked at the determined faces of the people around her. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was in the thick of it. And this was the moment that would decide everything. This story revolves around the idea of courage, trust, and the consequences of secrets. It portrays the journey of a young girl who, despite being just a child, steps into a world full of danger and hidden truths. She uncovers the layers of deception and betrayal within a complex web of law enforcement, shedding light on the moral dilemmas people face when caught between doing what's right and what they're told to do. It's about choosing to act for what's right, even when it means defying the odds. At its core, this story sends a powerful message about integrity, trust, and the importance of standing up for what's right. It encourages us to look beyond surface-level appearances, question what we're told, and fight against corruption, even when it seems impossible. Emily, the young protagonist, shows that even the smallest voice can make the biggest difference. Every action matters, no matter how small it may seem. If you enjoyed this thrilling and emotional story, don't forget to show your support by liking this video, commenting your thoughts, and sharing your emotions with us. Your interaction is a huge encouragement for us to continue creating more meaningful stories. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on another captivating story that could change the way you see the world. Every like, comment, and share helps us grow and inspires us to create even better content. Thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you so much for watching this story and for your continued support. We truly appreciate your time and engagement. Stay tuned for more exciting and thought-provoking stories. See you in the next video.